Okay, so we're recording. So go ahead and put in the chat one goal you have, either professional or personal goal for yourself this year.
You're having me, man, Toretto, you're having me think. Oh my gosh.
Nobody has Lee says that she wants to reach 10% more youth in each county. Leslie wants to try to get through the 4-H online 2.0 transition. I hear you. Heather wants to start clubs back to meeting. And Karen says to take more time for myself. I've been suffering from Zoom burnout. Oh, I hear that too. Daniel wants to get back to face-to-face programs. And travel professionally so I can see University of Florida friends again. Yes. All right. Welcome everybody to JSEP, to the PILD conference 2021. And you are at the Self-Compassion and Mindful Communication with Extension Stakeholders workshop with Heather Janney and Daniel Gonzalez. So without further ado, take it away.
Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate it. So I'm Heather Janney, and I'm actually a County Extension Director and 4-H agent down in North Central Florida. And I'm originally from Georgia. So I spent a lot of time learning a new population whenever I came down to Florida to work. I've been here about 15 years. And, you know, with me not being from the area, anytime you go into a new county, they are kind of closed off. They're not super excited about allowing a newcomer, especially in rural counties, because that's where I've always worked. So it's been really hard to get that buy-in, that trust. So this is a topic that is very close and dear to my heart. And today I'm presenting with Daniel. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Daniel Gonzalez, and I am one of the 4-H extension agents down here in Palm Beach County, Florida. And as is pretty indicative by that name, we are down here, we are a coastal county down here in South Florida. We are about an hour north of Miami.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. For those of you, if you do temperaments or anything, if you're gold, this is especially for you to give you an outline of what we're covering today. Keep things in order for you. I promise we'll try. So overview is that we'll do self-compassion, and we'll talk about some more on that. Then we'll go into some human needs and the intention to understand. We'll talk about observations and judgments, requests and agreements, and then, of course, always an extension, challenging situations. So to kick it off, we have to understand compassion before we talk about self-compassion. So compassion, you see the definition here, basically being conscious of others' distress and trying to alleviate it for them. And that is what compassion is. So whenever I started studying self-compassion, I started reading books and had some classes and things by Kristin Neff. And she's a writer of a book that's called Self-Compassion, The Power of Being Kind to Yourself. And she's got a lot of great things, and that's where some of this will come from today if you're interested in learning some more. So we're going to get a little active to begin with. We're going to go ahead and let you pull up another browser, because I know you're all sitting in front of a computer. We're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. I know everybody has Zoom burnout. I understand that completely. So pull up another browser, and I want you to go to www.menti.com and put in this code. So the code is 57334981. Anybody need that typed in the chat? We can definitely do that. 57334981. And you'll just join www, if I can type, menti.com, and that's where you'll input that code. You'll see it at the very top of your screen here. That's the cool thing about Menti, and I've learned how to add it to our PowerPoint slides, and it automatically shows all of our stuff. It's a new thing I learned like last week, and I was super excited. But at the very top of the slide of the window there, you'll want to put in the www.menti.com. And so on this, how do you typically respond to somebody? What is your posture? What do you say? What tone of voice do you use? So think about all those things and just give us a few words. How do you treat somebody else? What do you do to support them when they're going through a hard time? All right, so we got one person responding. We've got 22 in the room. Help us out. Oh man, smile. I like that one. And you'll see the larger words, just like any word cloud. Those are the ones that more than one person put in. Think about how your body moves and like your actual tone. Are you sweet? Are you super nice? How do you act whenever you're trying to support somebody? Active listening, closeness, open questions. I like those. Empathetic, inquisitive. Let's see, kind and calm. Got some really good words here. All right, we're up to 12. Who else? We got 25 in the room, so we got almost half.
Heather, the
Yes, ma'am.
isn't working. Can you re-enter it?
Oh, yes. There, someone else already did. Thank you. Thank y'all for making me know that I'm not completely crazy. So we've got some really good responses so far. Oh, Beverly, it may just not work on yours for some reason. I'm sorry. It definitely worked on someone else's. Well, we can go with what we've got, and those that have actually got it pulled up will, because not everybody's able to participate sometimes. It's just how it goes. So what we're going to do is go to the next question that probably pulled up on some of your phones or your browsers already. Now think about, how do you treat yourself? And I want you to go through each one of these and rate. Do you strongly disagree? You strongly agree? I treat myself better than I treat a friend. I treat myself the same as I treat a friend, or I treat myself worse than I treat a friend. So let's see what responses we have for that. Worse than they treat a friend. That's me, I promise. We're getting there. We've got some responses. And there is a reason why I'm having you do this. I've got some percentages that I'm going to share in a minute that they have done surveys, and actually you'll see that it's really amazing how people respond to this, because it's not always everybody treats themselves worse than others. All right, so we made it up to 15 at least. So you'll see on this little survey of our group here, the people, 3.4%, I think is how you figure that. Yeah, I treat myself worse than I treat a friend. So when we compare that to what the survey says by Kristen Neff, whenever they put all this together, 78% of people are more compassionate to others than they are to themselves. 6% are more compassionate to themselves than they are others. Believe it or not, you're nicer to yourself than you are others. I can't imagine being that way, but there are people that way. An extension, I don't think they exist that often. But then you've got about 16% that are about equal. And you'll see on this survey, it's pretty impressive that we do have some that treat themselves the same. So that's a good thing. It's something, everybody handles it differently, I promise. All right, so we're going to go into actual what is self-compassion. So with that, you need to take in that you've got self-kindness is one of the portions of it. And that's self-kindness rather than self-judgment. So it's also recognition of common humanity. So you're not lost in self-pity and dramatics. And you know that not everyone is perfect with that one. And then it's also being present with your suffering rather than running on with all those dramatics, and actually being mindful in the moment. And sometimes being able to tell yourself that, wow, you really are having a bad day. So self-compassion isn't just soft though. It's not just being sweet to yourself. You'll see clearly what's wrong and what needs to change. And that's how self-compassion is. It's not just, oh, I love myself. No, it's about taking care of yourself. All right. So I got too many things on my screen. Let me go to my next slide. So in this portion, I want to kind of show you how it feels. And believe it or not, I can show you in having you do some actions. So if you've got a camera, feel free to turn it on. That way I don't feel like I'm doing this all on my own. And I know Elaine's been a part of something whenever I did this before, so she has an idea. And Daniel's been around me long enough that he's learned some of it too. So the first thing we want to feel is the lack of self-compassion. So I want you to ball up your fist, and I want you to put them next to your body, and I want you to hold them really tight and just feel how that feels all over your body. That's how it feels whenever you're criticized, your judgment, resistance, discomfort. It's stressful completely. It just isn't a pleasant feeling, right? Everybody feel that? Yes, no, maybe. It's a different kind of feeling. And that's how your body feels whenever you don't give yourself self-compassion. So whenever you actually do get self-compassion, the first part of that is you're going to open up your hands in front of you and act like you're holding the world in your hands. I got to realize which way my camera goes. So hold your hands out in front of you. And that's where you just feel open and mindful and you notice, because now after balling your fist up like that, you can feel your fingers really well, right? You feel your skin. It almost feels like you got a little sensations running down your hands. And then I want you to act like you're grabbing the whole world. And that's part of that self-compassion, is being open and feeling connected. So you're touching and you're comforting. Then give yourself a hug like this. And that's that comforting, soothing. You feel safe because you've got yourself. So that's that soft side. But then there is a whole completely other side, which is protective. So the way that starts is you've got to be able to say no. So I want everybody to practice. No, no, no. So say it 3 times. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No, no, no. And that's what you got to tell people sometimes, right? We all struggle with that. There is a good no sometimes, but you've got to actually be able to do that with self-compassion. So the other thing is yes. And so whenever you're saying yes to yourself, that's when you go, yes, yes, yes. Can all of you do that? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, yes, yes. And that's saying yes to what you need. That's taking care of yourself. That's making sure you get the things that you need. The last part of this is being motivating. So it's telling yourself, you can do it. And put the thumb up. Sorry, I have to find the camera here. Moving around too much, right? All right, so you have to go, you ready? 1, 2, 3. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Yes, I know it's super cheesy and it's really crazy, but it's a different kind of feeling. And it's a way for us to be able to show that you are giving things back to yourself. You are taking care of yourself. Now, not always does that soft side work. Well, you move from the soft side and then you go on to the protective side, but then sometimes you do have to go back to that soft side. So whenever you do all that protective and you're like, you can do it and all that stuff, and you still fail, it's okay, because then that's when you have to come back. You have to do that hug on yourself and you have to say, it's okay. You know, I'll get it better the next time. So something like the chat says, simple. Is something you've got to just take care of yourself. And this is some ways just to think about that. All right. So that kind of got you in the attention span and you have a better idea of what self-compassion is now. But let's go deeper into the mindfully communicating. So when you're being mindful, you've got to be present. And we kind of noticed that whenever you held your fist up and then whenever you opened them back up, you were very present in feeling those sensations that went all throughout your arms, because it was a different kind of feeling, right? So when you're communicating, that's what you've got to do, is be present. You've got to be right there in that moment, really paying attention to those things around you. So these four things you see under the foundation of attention are the basic components of our experience. So we'll talk through each of one of these a little bit deeper, but just remember that you need to be mindful in your intentions with stakeholders. And really that means paying attention to each one of these individual things. Your observations, the things that you see, the things that you hear, doing your feelings, how you're reacting. You've got to be able to identify those, and then noticing needs, and then also request, of course. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next one for Daniel.
Yes. So thank you, Heather, for that intro to mindful communication. So now, how does mindful communication work into being present when dealing with stakeholders? Now, presence is the experience of being intentionally aware. So there's a mindful communication plug. The more presence we have when dealing with stakeholders, the more reliably we can know what is true for us and have the space to hear others, regardless of circumstance. Now, first, we see here the bullet points. Being present when dealing with stakeholders forms the basis of training for communication. We want our volunteers, stakeholders, and community members to be communicative. And if we effectively demonstrate proper communication, then we have the basis to expect the same. If we are present with them, then we have the basis to be the same. So whenever you're dealing with a stakeholder, and if you're always checking your phone while they're talking, or here's a big one in the Zoom world, if you have two screens and you're on a meeting with someone and you're looking at your second screen while they're talking, if you're not present in that conversation, well, guess what? Why should they be present with you? And presence creates the ground for connection. Historically, Extension developed a positive reputation through being an authentic, genuine, and transparent resource. If we meaningfully connect with our stakeholders, then they will realize then that we are more than Extension professionals, but a human being. Me, Daniel Gonzalez, I am more than a 4-H agent. Heather Janney is more than a 4-H agent and extension director. She is a human being. And it is no longer this 4-H extension agent talking to a 4-H parent. It is Daniel Gonzalez speaking to a 4-H parent who has a child who is in charge of a human life, right? So two human beings exchanging knowledges, experiences, and expertise. Being present offers reliable information about our own and another's experience through observation, intuition, and feeling, creates choice point for speaking and listening, serves as a meter for reactivity, and provides a container for intensity. If you are authentic and genuine, people will be authentic and genuine. Here's and I might call some people, listen, we've all done it. I know we get 1,000 emails as extension agents, and it's very easy that when two people ask us the same question, you go back to the other email, you copy and paste, you copy the response, you paste it on a new letterhead, you replace the first name, and boom, you click send. Are you being authentic and genuine when you do that? Because they're clearly coming to you in a time of need. And I understand, trust me, I understand that sometimes life gets crazy, but just something to think about. The rule of thumb is, in order to expect presence, we really have to be present. So, in extension, what is the desire to understand? So let's look at 3 bullet points here. The first is that human beings are naturally inquisitive. It is a defense mechanism that we all have. And several of us may have heard the term growing up, don't believe everything somebody tells you. So knowing that, why should someone automatically believe you? Is it because you're a professor, because you're an extension agent, because you're an expert in your field, because you're an adult? Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to not question you. And as a matter of fact, you learn to appreciate the inquisitive nature of human beings. It exists across all social groups, professional relationships, with your coworkers and community, personal relationships with your friends and family, and even more intimate relationships with your significant others. There's no getting around the inquisitive nature of human beings. I urge you to think about the last time that you were dealing with someone that you consider a loved one. And I want you to ask yourself, well, think about the last time, what was the most recent time where you're communicating with this person and they just start to tell you, but why? But why? But why? They undoubtedly love you, but it's still part of the human being inquisitive nature. And the second bullet point, being challenged in a conversation is difficult. To that point, being challenged in a conversation is almost never comfortable. We often place a substantial amount of effort behind our opinion. As extension agents, we have research, experience, degrees. Some of us have PhDs in our extension fields. And also as a 4-H agent, I'm going to have to make a 4-H plug here. We also have the learn by doing approach, right? I may be able to really help you with your garden because I have my own garden. But when someone asks, why do you believe that? It almost always throws us for a loop. And this makes us wonder if we really believe what we're saying, which truly isn't comfortable. The less blame and the criticism we place in our words, the more openness others will have to hear us. Therefore, coming from a point of curiosity and care. So put those two together. So you take human beings are naturally inquisitive, then you have being challenged in a conversation is difficult. You put those two together and you have extension. You know, we were given the privilege of serving our community as extension professionals because of our skill set, propensity for new ideas, and willingness to learn and grow in expertise. We've worked hard, both professionally and personally, to have the knowledge to do what we do, whether it is in youth development, family consumer science, horticulture, agriculture, or livestock. So we have to focus on what matters, which helps create a mutual understanding and respect and opens the field for more creative discussions. Now, here we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when stakeholders approach you, they are in seek of filling one of these needs. We are fueled by a need and one that is very real to the individual. All conversations, according to Maslow, and what Heather and I have experienced, all conversations in life emerge from one of these needs. Needs in this context are distinct from our cultural associations of being needy. Rather, they point to our fundamental interconnectedness with the environment and life. The premise is that all humans share physiological, relational, and higher or spiritual needs for fulfillment and meaning. Most conflict happens at the level of strategies and positions or ideas about how to meet our needs. Discerning the real needs, the deeper concerns or values behind a strategy, is a powerful training that helps to create understanding and transform conflict. We should focus on what matters, which helps create mutual understanding and opens the field, again, just like the old slide, for more creative discussions. And I know from the 4-H perspective, Heather and I speak as 4-H agents because that's what we do. Of course, Heather has the administrative component of being a county extension director, so she also deals with extension agents. But if you're a 4-H agent, you know that 4-H volunteers make the world go round, right? And oftentimes we can become so driven in that I need volunteers. Someone walks into your office. Do you want to be a 4-H volunteer? When in reality, in order to be an effective volunteer, we wager that you have to be at that self-actualization level. You have to be willing to say, hey, I see something that I really like, 4-H youth development, and I want other people to experience that same joy and growth I did. Well, the fact of the matter is that not everyone who walks into your office is at a point where they're physically able to self-actualize. They might still be willing, they might still be at a spot where they are meeting their physiological needs, their safety needs, their love belonging needs, their esteem needs. And then once they achieve all those, hey, let's be a 4-H volunteer. So moving it right, we're going to pass it right back on to Heather. And as 4-H agents, we believe in the learn by doing approach, right? So let's go back to a Mentimeter now.
Okay, we're going to try this again. All right, so it's www.menti.com. And this code is a different one, and I apologize, but there's only so many you can do and still get it for free. And you know, in extension, we definitely don't have tons of money to spend on lots of stuff like this. Thank you, Daniel. I put it in there in a different way too. So let's see if you guys can. I've got to make it where it's actually going to display on the screen correctly for you. There we go. All right. So on these, when you're guessing at needs, what would be the best way to answer things? And that's something that we've got to do whenever we're responding, is your advisory member says to you, I didn't have time to do my report. So if you're guessing at their needs, what's the best way to respond? You're going to get removed from the committee, and I don't want that. Do you need more time or want some help to understand it? Are you going to be able to have it ready tomorrow? Or what could I do to help you? And whenever you're thinking about this, you've got to really look at what their needs are. And so that's what you've actually got to, you're trying to guess their needs. All right, so we've got 13 responses. We've got 29 on. Let's see if we can get a few more. Most everybody thinks it's what can I do to help you, or do you need more time or want help to understand it? What do you think their need really is if they can't do a report? What kind of reports do you guys, those that have already answered, do you think there's a certain kind of report that you need from an advisory committee member? We all have advisory committees. I know you've got to. Maybe they're leading a committee or they're giving some other feedbacks. Oh man, we're up to 17 on this one. I don't want to ruin it for you. Oh, we got 18. We're closer. Okay, so keep answering. If you're in the process, I'm not going to stop you. But that is the correct answer. That would be, you'll see it's got it highlighted there. Do you need more time or want help to understand it? So with this one, you're actually guessing, because whenever the other response that everybody picked was, what could I do to help you? And that's just leaving it open-ended. It's not truly guessing at a need. And it works better whenever you guess at a need. It's almost like when someone gets sick at your office and maybe they're, okay, so one of your coworkers' mom passes away. What do you always say to them? Hey, let me know if there's anything I can do. Do they ever, ever, ever contact you? No, because you didn't say, do you need help? Do you need extra time? Do you need this? Do you need that? Whenever you give specifics, yes, they're more likely to call you. So that's the same concept on this one. All right, so let's go to the next one. Same kind of thing. So a volunteer asks you, just how long have you been an agent for anyway? How many of you have gotten that one, right? All right, so you're guessing what their need is. And so the choices are, I don't think that is relevant to our discussion. The next one, I've been an agent for 15 years and I'm very concerned about our project. Or maybe, are you angry about the way I'm handling this? Or are you wanting to understand more about where I'm coming from with this? So what do you think? Oh man, we're getting lots of answers. Most everybody thinks it's the very last one. All right, we're up to 15. Any more? I'm gonna hit the enter, show the correct answer. All right, you guys are right. You're getting better at this for sure. So that is actually trying to guess at their needs, is if they're wanting to understand where you're coming from with that. And the one about, are you angry about the way I'm handling that? It's not really guessing their needs, it's guessing their emotions. So there's a little bit different there. All right, so moving on, last one. So this one is, your county manager or extension director says, I've asked you to do this twice now. This qualifies as insubordination. How many of us have gotten in one of those type of situations where they're kind of pushy, they're really needing something immediately, and they're pretty upset? So what's the best way in guessing their needs? Is it, I don't remember you telling me about this before. I'm sorry, I'd like to show you that I understand. Like, I'd like to show you that I understand how you want this done. Sorry, I can't read today. Are you going to put this into my record? or are you wanting some more cooperation or support? What do you think? Let's see what answers we've got. Got 9, about 10 more, and we'll be up to where we were to begin with. All right, most everybody thinks, I'm sorry, I'd like to show you that I understand how you want this done. But some, are you wanting some more cooperation and support? Could be a close tie. Any more? A couple more maybe? All right, I'm gonna hit the enter, last chance. All right, so the correct answer is, are you wanting some more cooperation and support? And the reason for that is that you're actually guessing at what they need. I know this other one sounds like it, but it's actually more of you showing your needs. So you're needing to be accepted. With the actual correct answer is cooperation and support is what you're guessing that that person needs. All right, any questions on this? Depends on your relationship with your director. That's true, that is true. If you have a positive relationship, you might say one way. If you have a not so easy relationship, it could be seen the other way. And that does happen sometimes depending on the relationships that you have. I agree with that completely.
So moving on to 4 ways to respond to a message. So when a stakeholder reaches out to you, let's begin by saying that's a beautiful thing. That's an awesome thing. That means that you have appealed to them as a resource in the community. And that's a lot. There's a lot of tremendous worth in that. So there's 2 classifications to how to respond to a message. There are habitual ways of responding and there are empathic ways of responding. So habitual ways of responding are blaming the other person, blaming oneself. And empathic ways of responding are sensing the other person's feeling and sensing one's own feelings and needs, which is self-empathy and can often be done silently. And a good reflection for this is I challenge everyone to think about how incredibly complex your own life is. I want you to imagine right now when you go home and you are no longer an extension agent or not serving that official capacity, what do you have to do? How complex is your life? What tasks or chores do you have to do? Responsibilities do you have? Well, every other person's life on average is equally as complex as yours. And you will never know exactly what another person is going through. As 4-H agents, we deal with parents, volunteers, and teachers. As ag agents, you may deal with growers that are in the field. Other discipline stakeholders might have their own complexities. So this not only applies to stakeholders, guess what? It also applies to interoffice communication as well. I know oftentimes, when you read of 4 ways to respond to a message, let's use the chat box for a second. When I say 4 ways to respond to a message, when I say message, what type of message comes into your mind? Feel free to put it in the chat box. What type of message comes to your mind when you say a message? Emails, any form of communication. Okay, yeah. What comes into my mind are emails, right? I mean, and I know every Facebook comment, okay, that's a really good one, a Facebook comment. Text, emails, a text communication. So I know I speak for a lot of extension agents when I say that, gosh, our emails there's like a party that occurs on my emails every other day, and people just want to be there, and it's a lot, right? So whenever I say 4 ways to respond to a message, what comes in my mind is 4 ways, exactly, Beverly, explosive. Or how do you respond to emails, right? And that's just an example. Well, oftentimes it's important to be mindful of how we're responding to this. For example, in Palm Beach County 4-H, we are fortunate to have a very large school enrichment program. where we are in the schools, the kids are being introduced to 4-H, they're participating in hands-on learning and all that. Well, let's say, for example, a message comes into my inbox at 11:52 p.m., right? And it's a teacher that wants help for something the next day. Well, oftentimes you have to keep in mind when responding to messages, the concept of work-life balance and the concept of the complexities of the other person's life or the stakeholder's life. It's important for us to remember in the situation of a school teacher, that school teacher has been in the classroom all day, probably had parent-teacher conferences, and then was grading homework, right? So the only time she can send me an email is at 11:52 p.m., right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Or, so it's not, man, how insensitive of this person sending me an email so late at night. It's the only time that they can. And its extension is filling a need for them. And that's the only time they could communicate with you. Or here's another one. What about communication within the office? Let's say, I know that, let's just say Heather, there you go. I like to pick on Heather because we're friends. Let's just say if I send Heather an email and it takes Heather 2 days to respond to me. And when she finally responds to me, by the way, I sent her an email on Monday for something I needed on Tuesday, and she responded on Wednesday, right? So just it's a bad timing. It's very easy for me to say, man, Heather is just, I could respond habitually saying I could blame Heather, how insensitive of Heather not having any control over her emails. Or I could say it could be an empathic way, sensing the other person's feeling and sensing what Heather is going through. What people may not know is that Heather was on site helping her master gardener coordinator, one of her horticulture extension agents, working 12 to 15 hours on Saturday. So she took Monday and Tuesday off, right? So if I would have responded habitually, it would have been a much more immature response than, and really unfounded response than thinking empathically and wondering, hey, Heather, how are you doing? How was your week? Because I'm sure it'll come out eventually. And moving on to the next thing. So here we have separating observations from evaluations. Observations are a concrete, specific, and neutral statement of an event, of what we see or hear in our environment, separate from evaluation or interpretation. I know as extension, we are often incredibly driven on measuring impact and evaluating our program and proving to our land-grant university that we are doing the job they hired us to do. But separate that from observation. Observation is just a concrete, specific, or neutral statement of an event. An evaluation, a judgment is an evaluation or opinion of a person or event. Judgments often contain a grain of truth mixed with reactivity about our own feelings and needs. So when we are unable to translate an evaluation or judgment into more neutral terms, we can take responsibility for the evaluation we are making by acknowledging it. This table gives examples of how to separate observations and evaluations. And the italics indicate taking responsibility for our judgments and interpretations. So let's pick one here. Let's see, type of communication. So let's see. All right, so let's look at the second one down. So it's the use of verbs with evaluative, I'm sorry, that's my accent coming out. Evaluative connotations. And I feel like this one, I just feel Heather's eyes daggers at me right now. So he procrastinates. That's the evaluation mixed, that's the observation mixed with evaluation. And full disclosure, if you may not know my situation, for example, Heather sent me an email about this conference and it took me a solid day to respond. And what is the observation separate from evaluation? I've only known him to study for the exams the night before. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's basically separating evaluation from observation. And that's also using the mindfulness of developing connection and relationship with people. Because, for example, Heather knows me, right? So if the face value of he procrastinates, well, Heather also knows that Daniel spends all Friday at a school doing a school enrichment opportunity away from his email. right? So that's how mindful communication could really come in clutch, as the kids say. I feel so old when I say that. All right.
All right. So Daniel's picked on me enough. It's my turn now. So now you know a little bit more about those observations, evaluations, right? So in working with others, we often express our appreciation or our positive feedback as an evaluation. So basically we say, that was great, or maybe you're amazing. And I'm notorious for doing that while you're praising somebody, right? So while praising them that way, it feels good for them in the short term. We've got to remember that it can also disempower them because it places us above them almost as a judge. So we're actually depriving them of the actual information about what they have said or done that's pleasing to us. So instead, we can give others some real-time feedback and some appreciation by sharing. You'll see this list: the observation, our feelings, our needs. So for example, whenever you're working with a staff member, and maybe your county staff member, your program assistant, your secretary, whoever, they developed a brochure for an event, and that all of the faculty in the office are attending, and you were really surprised. And it was a fantastic brochure. It looked amazing. It was very professional. It was up to par, right? So what do you think you'd say? Can you put that in the chat? How do you think you'd thank them using those 3 areas? I know all of you have been through that. A staff member surprises you and you just really didn't know how to take it. Beverly, we can email that probably out to you. If you want to drop your email in the chat, and we will include that. Thank you for a job well done. But you got to make sure that you've got to include all those different things. You said job well done, but where are your feelings in that? So here's an example. Everybody's struggling a little bit. The brochure that you created really represents our office well, and I think it will do a fantastic job of showing us off at this event. You saved me so much time by doing that for us. And I know that's very structured and it's cheesy, and that's how you could look at it. But sometimes cheese, and I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes cheese helps. Whenever I came into this office, no one had a positive relationship. There was no communication whatsoever. So I've been very upfront and honest of, I'm a transparent individual. I don't hold back things. I say what's on my mind. Sometimes Daniel picks on me. I don't have a filter, which is okay whenever you're in one of those environments. But whenever you're upfront and you share more, it actually does a better job of building that trust. I know a couple of years ago at JSET, we had the guy that does the Trust Edge, and I've reread his books recently, and or one of his new books. And so it's all about building that trust, because if you do that appreciation, you're going to build that in those relationships. All right, Brandy had one. I really appreciate you developing the brochure for the office. It was very complete, attractive, and will help promote our work. That's a great one. Barbara put, you always make our office look good. And let's see, Jeannie, something like that, right? Correct me. I'm horrible at names and I refuse to pronounce them wrong. But wow, this looks amazing. Thank you for putting it together. So all of them have at least bits and pieces of that, but it's something that will take a long time to really work on, including the observations, our feelings, our needs. All right, so moving on, adding requests, because every time we talk with a stakeholder, we're going to figure out how to request something out of them, right? So our ability to make those requests is really important to building understanding, moving the dialogue forward step by step. And we've got to arrive at those solutions that work for everybody involved. So you can follow a statement or a request with something like, we'd like to hear back from you. How can they help you, or where we'd like to go in the conversation. So you've got to keep these 3 things within those requests. You've got to be positive. And somebody made some statement earlier, and it's all about staying in the positive, I promise. It's super important. So you got to ask for what you do want, not what you don't want. So whenever you're fussing at a volunteer, you don't tell them, hey, I don't want you to talk to kids like that. That's when you say, I want you to be super sweet to the kids. Please be nice, that kind of thing. You've got to be very specific, concrete. You can't go to the vague. You can't go to the abstract. You've got to, like I was saying a while ago about transparent, you've got to be upfront. You've got to be open about that stuff and clear. And then you've got to be distinct from demands. So you've got to actually request some strategies that meet that need to carry an openness for those points of view. So you've got to find a beginning rather than an end with that. So the clearer you are about what you want and why, the more creative we can be about how we go about making that happen. So it's important to differentiate those requests from demands. And while demands can produce results, we really know that they can come with a cost. And those demands can cost us goodwill, the quality of a relationship. It can cost motivation or innovation. And we really have to be honest and ask ourselves whenever we're going through this, that these two questions down here at the bottom. So what do you want the other person to do? And what do you want their reasons to be for doing that? And if we actually ask those questions, then that request can be very open and, in a linguistic form that we really are building that relationship with our stakeholders. All right, we're going to do it one more time. I promise this is the last one. If you hate Mentimeter, you can blame me. It's something we learned last year with one of our association things. You'll see it's menti.com. And sorry, I have to make it where you can read it. The code on this one is 2829-8295. And it's www.menti.com. This is just a way to get you guys to interact. We don't want to talk at you the whole time. We want you to actually get something out of this. So that's our reason for bringing something different in. Many of you may not even have been exposed to this. So the question is, I'd like you to volunteer for events more often. Do you feel like it is clear, specific, and doable? Yes or no? It is or it isn't? So got some responses. Got quite a few actually. 13, 14. Can we get 2 more maybe? Those 2 could be the ones that hate the Mentimeter right now, and that's okay. All right, we're up to 16. So I'm going to show you guys the answer. It is not clear, specific, and doable. So 14 of you are right. What could make it more clear, specific, and doable? What do you think? You want to throw that in the chat real quick? Or Karen, you unmuted. Go ahead, share.
You could actually specify exactly what you would like them to do. And so then that would give them the opportunity to say yes or no. But with that, you can also talk about the skills and their talents that they will bring to volunteering.
Absolutely. And we've got some great ones coming into the chat too. What events, times, how often is enough? Volunteering once a month. Could you move it to once a week? And then which events, examples of the events, even a specific event. And somebody else said add the why, which is a good point too. So you guys definitely have got a good handle on this. So the rest of them should be easy, right? There are only 2 more. Can you tell me 2 things you feel about that we accomplished or feel good about that we accomplished? Is it clear, specific, and doable? Getting some responses. Thank you guys for hanging in there with us on this. Figured it'd be a way to do something different for this. All right. Looks like we're going towards clear, specific, and doable. I know, whenever somebody asks me something, I want it clear, specific, and doable. I'm horrible sometimes about making my request that way because I think everybody can read my mind. All right, so let's see what the answer is. It is actually clear, specific, and doable. Now, those of you that said it's not, and I'm not trying to call you out, is there something that you feel like was missing from this one specifically that could make it clearer or more specific or more doable? And while we're waiting, if you can, throw that in the chat. and we'll actually go on to the next one. And if you don't want to throw it in the chat, that's okay too. So this last one, it's got two little parts. So when you say, I never listen to you, do you mean that I don't look you in the eye when you talk, that I don't do what you ask, or do you mean something else? Is that clear, specific, and doable? Everybody's in the same area on this one. All right. 14. Okay, we're going to show the answer. You ready? Oh, wait, let me try this. Y'all ready for this? It'll let me. That was my drum roll. All right, there's the answer. It is. All right, so you guys did really good. Great job on figuring out what's clear, specific, and doable.
All right, so moving on to the three kinds of requests. Well, really, it should be responses. We made a little bit of a typo in that one. But the three types of responses when dealing, well, requests from stakeholders, responses from us. There you go. So there's connection-driven responses, which are emotional, relational, solution-driven responses, which are logistical and concrete, and then emotion-driven responses, which are temporary. When dealing with stakeholders, write in the chat box, which one do you think would be the most beneficial when dealing with stakeholders? Should we strive for, well, actually, let's flip it. Which one is not appropriate when dealing with stakeholders? Which one is not appropriate? That's right, emotion-driven responses. So connection-driven responses and solution-driven responses benefit our extension programs and our relationships. It is best to use connection-driven responses until there is sufficient mutual understanding before moving on to solution-driven responses. I have to know how I can help you before I actually just start helping, right? When a firefighter or a paramedic comes to a scene, first, they check out the patient before they start doing chest compressions, right? You don't want a paramedic coming and start beating on someone's chest. And it's the same thing as extension. The more understanding we've established, the easier it will be to arrive at a solution. Furthermore, the more skilled we are at asking for information, the more room we have to address another's needs and problem solve when it's time to explore solutions. However, emotion-driven responses do not always meet our needs in extension, and a temporary decision or lapse in judgment can truly have a permanent result. It could be detrimental to a relationship. So in today's day and age, there are policies, procedures, and safeguards in place where there is always a paper trail. So there's not really necessarily a need for an emotion-driven response, especially when you're defending yourself, because there's always a trail. Remember that the truth shall always set you free. So moving on to our next slide, making agreements. The clearer agreements are, the more likely they will work and be easier to revisit. It's important that we cover the bases. We make sure that the solution is concrete and doable, discuss potential obstacles, have a plan in place to evaluate how it's going. Saying and hearing no. No can mean a healthy relationship or a source of important information. And find the yes behind every no. It is important to be as realistic as possible about the feasibility of our agreements and to check that there is buy-in from both sides. If you're an FCS extension agent and your home ec teacher at the local high school wants you to come and provide parenting classes, and let's just say you're in a county of 600,000 people and they want you to come out every single day of the week, is that really doable? I mean, because you still have a county of 600,000 people. So an agreement made with genuine willingness works for both people. It is more likely to happen. Our ability to say and hear no without losing connection with the other person is essential in being able to explore and make arrangements. Hearing no can be difficult. It can trigger frustration and stimulate disappointment in not getting our way. It can reveal fixation on a specific outcome. It can touch old wounds. And there are two keys to hearing no. See if you can view no as a sign of a healthy relationship. I am happy when Heather tells me no, because that means that she trusts me. She's like, man, she's open enough with Daniel where she's like, Daniel, we are not going to present in Greece. Dang it, like, dang it, we can't make that happen. Although I think Heather would be down for Greece. And if someone always says yes, we don't know if they're genuinely agreeing or doing so out of fear, shame, or obligation, which can lead to resentment, mistrust, or lack of follow through. On the other hand, when someone says no, we could really learn to trust their yes. So when Heather says we are not going to Greece, but she says, would you like to present at PILD? I know, okay, Heather really wants to be at PILD. And we could also view no as an important source of information. Remember that requests are just the beginning, a starting point. A no is just more information indicating that there is something else more important preventing them from saying yes. So when someone says no to a request, inquire about what else is important to them. This can uncover important information about collaboration. And before we move on to the next slide, one very good piece of advice I was given when I started an extension was to set the boundaries now you wish to have. Because if you take care of yourself better, you are not going to give someone else your leftovers. So moving on to the next slide, we're going to go back to Heather for dealing with conflict. And I know we're a little bit short on time, so I really appreciate your willingness here.
And I promise we'll try to tie things up, but this is your biggest thing and the most thing that you come in contact with in extension, right? So when you're having conversations with others and they're coming towards conflict, here are some 4 key areas that you really could look at that will help you on really looking through and dealing with those conflicts a little bit better. So grounding, and that goes back to that mindfulness. Remember we talked about that? And if you attended, some of you may do mindfulness or may practice, but if you don't practice mindfulness, it's about finding that ground, feeling how your body feels, knowing when you're going to react, knowing how your reactivity is going to be. If you're angry, does your breathing speed up? Do you start sweating? What are the things that happen? So you've got to find that within yourself. You've got to identify that whenever you get upset, you've got to find that ground. Take those breaths, because that's a big thing, is breathing. Preparing for those conversations is something that's very helpful. And if you already know those things about yourself, then you can identify that beforehand. So whenever you get into that conversation, you already know that you're getting a little upset. You can go ahead and start doing those deep breaths of some sort. And also listening. Because if you give that person that openness that you're listening to them, they're more likely to listen to you. And that's what's most important. And then earlier I was talking about trust. So the more trust that you share, the more intention to actually understand, the more willingness that you'll receive that back in return. So you've always got to make sure that you're giving what you would like to receive, basically. Goes back to that old adage.
And when all else fails, when speaking to stakeholders, try to pause the conversation. And here we have some terms that worked well for us. If everything was perfect and went as, if everything was perfect and went as planned, I'm going to ask a little bit of a deep question. What would be the point of extension? We exist because people need help, right? If, we are people, we are imperfect. We may not know all the answers, but we work in a community that does, such as asking other extension professionals, specialists, professors, and even volunteers. Because if the ag world was perfect, if kids were developed perfectly, if family consumer sciences were just rocking, there would be no need for us. So imperfection is what makes extension. And I don't think we have to be perfect to be extension agents. Often saying, I'm not sure, but I will find out is a much more sustainable response than sending someone in the wrong direction. Like telling someone to spray a certain pesticide on a plant that would eventually kill them. If we were to just take 20 minutes to hear about what type of plant they have.
All right, so how to draw all of this back together. We learned that self-compassion to begin with, right? So you have stakeholders show up in your office, or maybe you go to them and they might say something completely negative. Well, what you've got to remember is how to give yourself a hug and say, it's okay. Everybody, it's common humanity. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm not perfect. None of us is. So we will be okay. So that swift kick to not mull in that self-pity. So that's how all of this connects. Being present in that moment, giving yourself that support to know that as long as you're present and you're trying everything you can on your end, it's okay. Next time it'll go better. It's all right. We aren't perfect in Extension. That's why we have jobs, because we know how to make it better, right? All right. So I know we're 1 minute over, but I'm so proud of me and Daniel. Really, because we're only 1 minute. And so if you guys have any questions, please feel free. We'll stick around for a couple of minutes. Throw those in the chat. You can unmute yourself. You're welcome to do that. Our email addresses are on this slide. You're welcome to give us an email. He and I are both open to repeating this at any point. If you'd like us to come and present at a state conference or anything, that's something that we've been involved with quite a bit. Thank y'all. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Daniel. And we certainly now have your email addresses and we can reach out directly to you. Is there any questions that are burning before we wrap up? Nope, everybody just seems to be saying thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Jeannie.
Jeannie.
Yeah, I really love the PowerPoint. The
Glad you
PowerPoint,
like it.
great. And wanted to know where you got those people. Those fun little
That would be Canva. Canva is something that we've started using more, and that's how I figured out how to include Mentimeter and embed it. We do that with Feel Good Fridays for any 4-H YDP. Poor Lane's gotten thrown into that all the time of learning how to use Canva to present. So it's something we've used a lot here lately. In Florida, there's a lot of us that have learned it, and it's just really taken off.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you all so very much. And we'll see you after our lunch break.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.